Hi everyone, today we are joined by Yoni Kozminski, a mastermind in scaling e-commerce businesses and a pivotal figure behind a $50 million e-commerce growth fund. Yoni's expertise in optimizing business operations and financial strategies is something every e-commerce store owner dreams of tapping into.
That's right, Lewis. In our chat today, Yoni will be shedding light on what it takes to not just survive, but thrive in the competitive e-commerce landscape. We'll dive into the topic of hiring A-League virtual assistants for your e-commerce business and how it's crucial that every element of your business is put together so that you can thrive and really have a successful business for the long term.
Absolutely, James. For our listeners, this isn't just another discussion. This is going to be a real roadmap to potentially skyrocketing your e-commerce business's value. So make sure you're ready with this one. Make sure you've got some notes in front of you. And we're going to go deep into the mechanics of business scaling that Yoni has perfected over the years. So get ready, get your notepad out, and let's unlock the secrets to maximizing your e-commerce potential. Here we go. Welcome to the Dropship Unlocked Podcast. I'm Lewis Smith, the founder of Dropship Unlocked, and with me is our client success coach, James Eardley. Now, when we're not recording the podcast episodes, we're running our own e-commerce businesses and helping aspiring entrepreneurs launch their own high-ticket dropshipping businesses. Keen to build your own 6 or even 7-figure business? My book, The Home Turf Advantage, is your blueprint for launching a profitable online store. Grab your copy at htabook.com today and let's get you started. Now sit back, relax, and let's unlock your potential with the Dropship Unlocked podcast.
Today, I'm very excited to introduce to you Yoni Kozminski, who is a co-founder of multiple businesses ranging all the way from a $50 million e-commerce growth fund in South Cole, all the way through to businesses that specifically focus on hiring talented individuals from the Philippines. So there's going to be loads to dive into about scaling e-commerce businesses, getting the right team in place so we can create a sustainable, consistent income stream that doesn't rely on us to make sure the money keeps coming in consistently. So, Yoni, firstly, it'd be great with a little bit of an introduction to yourself and a little bit about your journey to get you to the position that you're into today.
Yeah, absolutely, James. Firstly, thanks for having me on. Those listening in, I hope, if nothing else, you get a few nuggets of value and can learn from mistakes that I've made through my sort of 15 plus year journey. To keep it really short, I cut my teeth in digital marketing, creative advertising for a 10-year period, working with brands like Sony, MasterCard, Mercedes-Benz, Medtronic. It's a British audience. So Mondelez, Cadbury Dairy Milk, Freddo Frog, Boost, Cream Egg, the works, companies like that, everything from Facebook media buying. I was the largest Facebook media buyer in Australia for a number of years there with Mercedes-Benz, to web development for the priceless.com MasterCard website, content production, TV commercials when I was in the US, and found my way actually into e-commerce initially through dropshipping. I had a brand that I was curating content for guys, things that I really liked. And, I don't know if it comes up in the episode, but that failed miserably. Hopefully none of you guys experienced some of the turmoils that I did. But today, as James clearly put out, I'm running 3 companies at the same time. I have Escala, which is a process improvement consultancy. We help build systemized scale into businesses through operations. We then help staff it with talent from the Philippines in our Multiply Me recruitment and payroll and HR management company. And South Cole is the vehicle where we invest in e-commerce businesses looking to exit, where we take them on this 2-3 year journey with an investment bank and a fund to grow them to exit. So there you go, James. I know it's a mouthful, but just trying to give the listeners a reason to actually see that I've made a ton of mistakes, and hopefully, like I said, you guys can take some lessons from them.
Yeah, no, fascinating to hear about your journey. You've got a wealth of experience from different areas and different levels up the journey of building an e-commerce business from start to finish in a way, with the exit piece at the end. But keen to dig into that failure that you mentioned, because with failures becomes loads of lessons, no doubt you took from that failure. So why do you think your initial business failed? And importantly, what were the lessons you think you took away from that initial failure?
Yeah, it's a great opening question here. So I'd say, I shared briefly, but that the 10 years that I had in creative advertising and digital marketing, it was working in agencies with big companies from the lens of smaller agencies. So I was the 10th employee in Australia. We grew to about 30. I was the 15th in Los Angeles. We grew to about 45. And so I'd seen and experienced how to build a digital presence, how to drive traffic via PPC, how to do SEO strategy and content production. I understood all the mechanics around e-commerce and how to do things like, leveraging a Facebook pixel and conversion tracking and optimizing the add to cart experience, remarketing in the works. I really touched on a lot of these things. And so I'd always felt that while it was great to work for other brands, to do it myself on things that I was really passionate about was the ultimate excitement. And so I started a website called justforlads.com. I still hold the domain, but unfortunately, I got stung from a mistake that I hope no one else experiences. I can't say you'll be protected, but here's your first nugget. If you're just starting out on the journey, my website was focused on curating really cool content for men. So everything from everyday carry stuff and wallets to just the range of these sort of sub $50 products that I was really interested in. This is going back quite a bit of time. This is probably about 7 or 8 years ago when I was doing this. And so this is before, all the Alibaba style, slap a bumper sticker on it and do drop shipping. It was still relevant then. Today, it's a very different existence, and it's much harder to build a brand when you don't have that quality control that has sort of shifted over the course of time. But what I'd done was I'd put all these products together. I'd invested in building a beautiful Shopify store. Everything looked great. I had a lot of experience doing this. I had the resources and capabilities. And lo and behold, I hit launch and things look like they're going great. I'm getting a lot of traffic to the specific products. And I think within the first week, all of a sudden my ads just got paused and I had no idea what had happened. It can be a bit of a black hole even inside of Facebook when they're, because there were no specific ads that they were flagging. But what I learned as I dug deeper was that I had listed like a whole bunch of different knives that were just really cool, like butterfly knives and pocket knives and things, again, that would just really align with the brand that I was building. And they flagged me. I went through a whole process. It can be quite hard to get reinstated, and I never managed to reinstate it. And so as a result, that whole website, that whole experience, I even tried like some really creative things. I built a 301 redirect to a different website. So I bought media to one website to forward it to the other, but they were smarter than I was, obviously. And so I couldn't solve this problem. And I had to pack down a whole idea through just a foolish mistake that really shouldn't have had an impact. So again, I hope you guys can learn what not to do and to review the Facebook guidelines around media and what you can and can't have on site.
Yeah, some great lessons, no doubt. But the policies are not that clear, but now we know to stay away from the knife niche if you want to run ads on Meta or Google. I think it would be the same there as well. So no doubt lessons. And I think that the key part was that you had all of these knowledge that you've built up from working for other companies, the digital marketing background, and you wanted to put that into your own businesses and really put that to your own work. And then let's fast forward a little bit now to eScala and Multiply Me, because those companies fascinate me in the way that you're able to scale e-commerce businesses. So firstly, if we could talk about Multiply Me, which I know is a lot about scaling and hiring people to be able to scale your business. So do you use freelancers specifically from the Philippines? And if so, why do you hire talent from that part of the world?
Yeah, again, great questions. That's why you're the host, James. I'll give you a little bit more context here just for those listening. I joined an e-commerce business that was e-commerce, but large footprint inside of fulfillment by Amazon. And it wasn't dropshipping. It was a private label brand where it was constructed. I was able to, in 12 months, grow that from 2 million to 5 million, and it was acquired. And so through that experience, I understood that I was able to build effectively the working operation needed to scale any e-commerce business, be it drop shipping or private label. And so that was what led me into Multiply Me. And the experience that I'd had in doing that was I really understood that, one, from a cultural perspective, it felt like really strong alignment from a Filipino culture perspective. You're talking about people who are really motivated when it comes to delivery, and job security is really important. English is the tested and very much spoken language that exists. So they're not learning it necessarily as a pure second language. It's part of the schooling and higher education. Anyone that has a college degree in the Philippines has done that in English, and 600,000 graduates every year. So I had some really good experiences. I'd actually found talent from some of the largest digital agencies globally, one of them named Cognizant. And that just was a bit of a paradigm shift for me, realizing that I didn't need to get these really baseline VAs where I'd build a task list and they would just do the work. I could give them accountability and I could say, you are responsible for my paid media. These are the expectations I have around the campaigns. And lo and behold, it was able to really scale and grow and achieve everything that I'd hoped for. So that's really my love, or where my love affair started with the Philippines, probably over 10 years ago now, but more specifically in the last sort of 7 or 8.
Yeah, interesting. I have a similar love affair, as you put it, with Filipino workers. I've got a team working for me now on the 2 stores that I'm running. And yeah, I think I completely agree with the cultural attitude that they bring to work is amazing. The sort of cheerfulness that I've experienced. Yeah, I can see why we hire from that part of the world. Something you mentioned is like scaling a business from 2 to 5 million and having an exit from that. There must have been some things that you learned from building from 2 to 5 million is a good size jump. Are there some things that you can see as like repeatable patterns that come in place when you build a business from that level from 2 to 5 million?
Plenty of repeatable patterns. I would say that it's probably one of the more interesting and I would say sort of challenging parts of growing a business. And what I mean by that is it's far more complicated running a 10, 15, 20, $50 million business, but the learning requirements from going, particularly from like 0 to 1, where you can get your hands around virtually everything. You know, you can really touch and feel and handle everything from like the bookkeeping to, you know, and the finance function to the marketing, to identifying the products, to listing them on your Shopify store, to really sort of getting your hands around everything. When you start to get into that 2, 3, 4, 5 million, you no longer have the ability to touch on every single thing at a personal level. If you're doing it, and I have seen people that have been able to, their lives generally are not optimal when it comes to, they might be cash rich, but time poor. And, you know, I think from a longevity standpoint, you need to solve for those things, because at some point you're going to burn out. You can't take a holiday. You can't give your partner or your children or wherever you're at in your life stage, or even your fitness or health, everything starts to take a secondary seat. So I'd say some of the key lessons that I have taken and the things that are then repeatable is, 1, building clear goals. So understanding where you're driving to. So what does 12 months on, 3 years on look like? Defining what you want to achieve. So that might be, how many products do I want to have live? What is the category that I'm focused on? What is my net profit margins? Really critical. You know, I think a lot of people tend to look at revenue numbers as a badge of honor, but if you told me you had a $1 million business and you had 50% net profits, I would say you are kicking absolute goals here. And that's a much better business than someone who's got a $8 million business at 5% net profit margins and, you know, is working super hard not to actually take any of the money home. So I'd say that's 1. 2, once you have that clear vision, working backwards and saying, well, in order for me to succeed in achieving that vision and the lofty goals that we all as entrepreneurs like to set ourselves, who do I need, or what do I need to be true from a number of products that I need to identify, number of products that I then need to list, success of each product? When do I actually say that this is not a product that makes sense to fit in my catalog of products? So being critical and defining the criteria of what you're searching for, what good looks like, when to pull, you know, saying no is probably the hardest thing. So understanding that, and then finally putting the right people in the right seats at the right time. So that's not, I want to be a $5 million business, I'm starting today. It's, I want to be a $5 million business. It's going to take me 2 years, 3 years, 1 year, whatever your goal is. And what are the incremental people that I then need to bring into that business in order for it to be true? I mean, James, I can keep going, but I'll stop and maybe there's questions here.
Yeah, 100%. No, there's loads to dive into. So I think something that stands out is, like, you illustrated a person that I know intimately. There are many people like this where they struggle to give away the tasks, especially when they're fairly early stage and it's their baby, this business that they're building. But I mean, what would you say to those people that are struggling to be able to release some of that control over their business?
So this is where most people get bogged down. I think it's probably the biggest challenge that particularly early stage entrepreneurs face. And what I would say, or the advice I would give that person if they were to ask me, is that one, giving up and relinquishing the executional delivery of parts of the business does not dictate you giving up control of the ultimate decision. And to highlight an example of that, let's say that part of your strategy is to be having an enormous catalog. You want to have 5,000 products, in your mind. Your systematic approach is, I'm going to find all of these locally sourced suppliers. I'm going to pound the pavement. I'm going to leverage tools. I'm going to do it in a way that makes sense to me. And I'm just going to see what sticks. I'm going to see where are the good profit margins, who's buying. I want to sort of take it on that approach. You do not need to be the person that is finding all of those products. You do not need to be the person who is loading them up on the Shopify store. You do not need to be the person trying to, exert the raw data, trying to understand what actually happens. What you need to be doing is you need to be building the infrastructure and saying, okay, I have a VA, I have a researcher, a product researcher who's going to find me all the potential deals that I can resell on my platform, and building the criteria. It needs to have a potential profitability of this. There needs to be X number of website traffic. There needs to be low competition, really setting that criteria and then saying, I need you to bring me this in a really clearly defined, whether it's a presentation or a data set or an Excel or however it is you're looking to present it. And each week, as an example, you will say, right, these 5 or 10 or 50 or 100, whatever you're sort of looking to drive toward, these are the products that make sense. You've actually had the ability to look and review and say, yep, that's the product I want to have live. So you can already augment how you're involved in the business from pretty early on by bringing in, a resource that might cost you $5 an hour to really buy you time. And I think that the other component of that around relinquishing control is that most early stage entrepreneurs do not value their time enough. They don't understand how valuable it is for you to be able to think about growth opportunities, strategic relationships. Like, what does it look like to double down and explore how you can increase your ROAS or anything that relates to actually growth, deploying an SEO strategy, finding other material ways to grow the brand. And you really got to look at it from a holistic picture and saying, if I am doing this, because the great equalizer is time, then what am I missing out on?
Yeah, and whenever you say yes to something, you are saying no to something else. So if you're saying yes to doing all of these tasks, there's a sacrifice somewhere. And a lot of people that are getting started with these e-commerce businesses, I know I was one of these people, had a 9-to-5 job at the time, and I started it initially as a side hustle. And it was a mindset shift that I needed to go through, because in the 9-to-5 job, in the 9-to-5 world, I was very much a doer. These are the tasks you have to do. These are the time you've got to do it. So my mindset was based on, these are my list of tasks. It's up to me to get those done. I'm not in the mindset to delegate. And you have to switch completely to think, okay, instead of how am I going to get through this list, we need to start thinking about who is going to get through this list for me. Who, not how, is that key term. Yeah, we're very big on building lifestyle businesses with this channel that we can outsource to other people to run, so that we can get our control of our lives back, essentially. But when we look at our list of tasks, Yoni, we've got to decide which tasks to give away. I wonder if there's going to be some that we need to keep control of. What sort of criteria would you put against a to-do list to decide, okay, fairly early stage business owner, you've got everything on your plate, which tasks would you be looking to give away first?
Yeah, great question. And the who, not how, Dan Sullivan, strategic coach, it's a great framework for anyone who's looking to really understand how you can bring in the best people to do and achieve the tasks as opposed to trying to take it on yourself. So a big believer in that. And I think to your question, I think there's a few different ways in which you can approach this, right? The first, and I would say the simplest way to approach this, if this is you who really struggles to say, how can I delegate something? How can I actually hand it off? An exercise that I do for myself, and I'm just wired this way. I like to really have every hour of my day planned out, just in terms of what I'm doing and be accountable to what I've committed to, even if it's task oriented. It's about sort of understanding. What I'll do is I'll actually map out in my calendar what am I doing? I mean, people suggest doing 15-minute increments. I think that's pretty tough, and I think that takes a lot of time. So I just plan out my week and I say, right, these are the objectives that I'm trying to achieve this week based on, for me, the 6-month strategy that we've set out and how do I actually get closer to that. But again, earlier stage, you're probably not thinking as far ahead. Just as a side note, I have a team of 90 people internally. So I'm running a bigger business than probably someone who's just starting out. So I'm thinking about it in longer time horizons. I think when it's early stage, it doesn't make sense to be trying to think so meticulously, because you're still a speedboat. You're not, this heavy, slow moving tugboat that you really need to guide the directions to move, 2 degrees left or right. So coming back to how I would approach it, look at how you're spending your time, put it in your Google Calendar. There's a beautiful feature that lets you actually attribute like a coloring and therefore a sort of a naming convention around things like, product research, listing creation inside of my Shopify store, development work, SEO, media buy, all the tasks that you're doing, put them down. And then at the end of the week, you'll see A, how many hours you're actually working, but B, what are you actually working on? And so how you can then take it to the next step is you say, right, from 5 to 1, 5 being something that critically needs to be you want to select the products that's really important to you, whereas 1 is uploading it to Shopify, which is a really simple, process. Once you've figured it out the first 1 or 2 times, that's a 1 or a 2 that can be handed off. So really understanding sort of what are the tasks that don't really need to be you from a strategic position, and what are the things that really need to be you, building that list, and then trying to look at what are the like skills. I would advise people not to fall into the trap of saying, I'm just going to get a VA to do everything that's 1 to 3. So they're doing Canva, they're doing, bookkeeping, they're doing, like if you're trying to blend too many of these capabilities, you get a jack of all trade and a master of none. So look at what you can offboard that is a similar skill set. To give a good example, maybe someone who's looking at your, website performance and your paid media and your keyword research around Google Trends and what is making sense. That could be bundled into an individual. And because they're going to do the same types of things, they'll need a bit of training to think about how you look at it. But that's one way. The alternative, which I think is sort of the people who are maybe a little bit more strategically minded or have gone through this, is we're not going to be the best at everything, right? And I think you really need to accept and say, while you could spend the time to focus on doing things and becoming the best, because that's how we all, believe that we have the capabilities, saying I'm going to be the very best at this 1 or 2 things, and bringing in experts, the who, not how, of bringing in those experts to actually take you to a level that you couldn't go by yourself. The only challenge with that is that you need to find the right relationships when you don't have a significant or a considerable amount of capital to start with, or you're not at those levels where you can afford it. That becomes the trade-off. You either build from, that would be the first example, as bottom up. So I'm trying to build capabilities from the bottom up and hand them off, versus top down, where higher cost, but you'll pay less operational debt. You won't need to guide them as much.
Interesting. So I've always used the bottom up approach. So my first hire was a customer service VA. And then from that position, I realized that, either I needed a second customer service virtual assistant, or I needed sort of more particular skill sets in certain areas that was going to be key to growing the business. So I use that bottom up approach. I'm keen to just touch on as well in terms of finances and what position we need to be in when we first hire our initial VA. So I was given some advice when I was deciding when to hire my first VA, was that I needed to have the net profit every month to cover at least 2 virtual assistants before I was ready to hire my first one. And to put that into figures, I'd expect to pay a first virtual assistant with customer service about $600, $700 a month at most. So I'd be looking at a net profit of $1,400 before being able to hire the first VA. Would you agree with that advice?
I think that's sound advice. I think you always, coming back to things we were talking a little bit about before we hit record, you really need to be paying attention to your business profitability. And I would say, James, I'm definitely someone who has historically built our business from bottom up as well. And what I'm finding now with such a large team is that you have this sort of operational debt. You've got almost too many players and not enough coaches. And so that's something you need to find a healthy balance around, is how do you sort of at the right stage bring in coaches to expand your objective. But I would say, like, from $0 to $1 million in revenue, I think it's totally safe to say that you're likely going to be building bottom up. Once you start to go above those types and with a healthy net profit margin, we're not talking about 1%, 2%, 5% net profit margins, with a healthy net profit margin, that's when you can start to explore and say, okay, I'm going to give up a little, but it's going to create so much more.
Brilliant. Yeah. So that stands. I like the player and coach analysis, because obviously with the basic majority UK audience that we're speaking to, we all understand the football coach and the football player analogy. And initially we've got to bring in the players. So you bring in your Kevin De Bruyne's, your A-star players. And then there's a certain point where you have to replace yourself as coaching all of the players to get to that stage. So at what level of business do you start to see people hiring coaches instead of the sort of customer service players? At what stage in the business does that make sense?
So it would come back to, firstly, what is your initial capital outlay? If you're someone who has, capital and not starting it as the side hustle to get out of the 9-to-5 work, or you're doing that, but you also seem to have saved a considerable amount of capital, you have sort of the professional business acumen to understand what the business needs to look like from a financials perspective, then you might see that those decisions coming earlier and build from that sort of top-down approach. I would say for most people who are just getting into drop shipping, figuring it out as they go along, I think the reality is, I would probably start to look at coaches maybe at the earliest stage of that $500,000 revenue, looking again at net profit margin as a key indicator here, what you can afford. But I think actually how to frame it, if you take, I think it's a little bit generic just to throw figures out at you guys listening, is, what am I actually bringing in, and what does that free up for me? And, I would say that the first coaches that you likely bring in are the things that are going to drive profitable growth. So it might be someone that sits across your paid media and SEO and email marketing functions from a coaching perspective, because they should be able to become a force multiplier in saying they understand how to do it. They understand how to manage that team if this is not in your core skill sets. And all of a sudden, you can start to focus on the things that are really going to move the needle. And that's product or category expansion, and looking at the things that, I think for a lot of people, you're not just getting into the drop shipping game for the money. There's also an appeal of, picking the right product and building a sustainable business too. So anything that's going to free you up to get to that position quicker would be the first coaches that I would look to bring in, especially if they can manage your existing players or switch out the team from a B League to Premier League style existence.
Yeah, fantastic. So I know that Multiply Me has a particular approach to hiring A-star players, because VAs, just like football players, there'll be different levels to how the skill level or the talent level they have when we hire them. What is Multiply Me and your approach to hiring a team member from the Philippines, and how do you really get the A players from the start?
So for us, our approach is one, we're typically working with businesses who are looking to bring in they're at the stage where they're not looking for these sort of fractional resources that it's like, I'll take 10 hours of this person and 3 hours of that person. They've sort of graduated and saying, in order for me to build my company and my vision, I want people on my team who are exclusively on my team. So we're finding full-time talent. And I share that for a couple of reasons. One, how we're set up is we offer a lot of the sort of fringe benefits like healthcare, social security, HMO, 13th month, these things that are a little atypical for sort of remote setup companies in the Philippines. And so as a result, we're able to attract a higher caliber of talent, a lot of ex-corporate talent. So that's sort of already, from our perspective, a bit of a differentiator in how far up sort of the food chain of talent and capabilities we can move. But we really pride ourselves on finding great talent. So we'll go and we'll help build the job description with the person that we're looking to work with. We will then go out and we will do a lot of headhunting. We have all, the bells and whistles that you would expect from sort of a recruitment company that's placing 30, 40 plus people every month into other businesses. So we have, premium LinkedIn recruiter. We have access to job boards that don't exist for foreign entities. We have obviously an enormous database of people that we've vetted over the last 5 or so years, and so we have all these sort of tools in our arsenal to get access to higher caliber talent. But I think for what you can take at home, whether you work with us or not, I would say the things that you can apply independent of Multiply Me is one, being really clear on what you are trying to solve in your business and building a really strong job description that attracts the right person, building a scorecard or a way in which you're actually interviewing that person and getting clarity on, have they achieved these things before? What are the things that they're really passionate about? And do they align with a role that they're actually going to be playing in your business? You want to get people who are motivated to have, the growth mindset in their role and their capabilities. And so if you set up that interview process the right way, if you build the right incentives, right? So if you're saying, I think it's great. I think with Filipinos, particularly job security is a really important thing. But if it was, for example, you wanted to get a product researcher, that was the first role that you said, I really want to have 5,000 products that I can sift through to pick the top 50 every year. And, building an incentive program that's actually outlined in the job description saying, we reward people that are able to find the best products. And if you can do it, you'll get whatever bonuses every month or every quarter based on selection and success. So finding ways to make sure that you're aligning that hire with success and finding ways where it's meaningful for them and it's meaningful for the business. And there's that real clear alignment.
Align your incentives with what your goals are for their position. So something I've done is give bonuses to virtual assistants that are driving 5-star Trustpilot reviews, because as a customer service representative, one of the biggest things that we can push for is reviews, and they have a big play in how many we get. And that's been very successful in getting a lot more reviews because they are then incentivized with the extra bonus. Something I wanted to dig in as well is the talent really surprised me actually from the Philippines, because I didn't realize quite how many people have graduates over in the Philippines. There's quite a considerable number, isn't there, of people that have actually graduated in the Philippines of high level hires from the start.
Yeah. I mean, to give you the stat around it, the US, who I think might produce, let's exclude countries like China, who I don't have the answer to, but the US produce 2 million new college graduates every year with a population of about 360 odd million people. In the Philippines, it's about a third the size of the US. So it's 120 million people. And right now they're producing a little over 600,000 college graduates. And that number continues to increase year on year on year. So what you're seeing is, the closing of the gap. I mean, this is how it works with emerging world countries. A lot of these countries where, once upon a time, even, look at where China was and where China is today, now a global superpower. It takes time for them to actually achieve this reality, but they're closing in relatively fast, and I think that's what's a really exciting prospect of the Philippines. But I think it expands even beyond to a lot of these emerging world countries. I think one of the big things that we're realizing today, and it's the same for Brits, it's the same for Americans and Australians, just the cost of onshore labor. And what the business needs to be doing from a profit starts to become, in some realities, not as viable today. So if you can find ways to actually offset that, you're building a much better business. And when we talk about dropshipping specifically, it is definitely a game of margins. At the end of the day, you have to be smart in what you're picking, because if you're picking things that are commoditized that you're going to make a couple of cents on compared to your competition, when you roll in all the fees and the cost per acquisition and your ability to resell to them, if you're not really building an intelligent strategic product offering that's aligned with the market, that you can continue to create these repeat sales to the same audience, then you get that margin erosion pretty quickly.
You do. And actually the who we hire plays a big role. So my biggest expenses initially is the marketing spend to acquire the sales. And the second largest monthly expenditure is actually on the team that we've got in place, because the software cost of running an e-commerce business is so low. So it really does make a big difference. And we're talking 5 or 6 times cheaper to hire somebody from the Philippines compared to a UK worker. So it really adds up in terms of the margins, and yet the skill level is absolutely there. And English as well. I mean, English is oftentimes a second language for a lot of people in the Philippines, and that's always struck me as well as something that's really strong over in the Philippines.
Yeah, it's literally the tested and spoken language in many parts. I'll actually throw in there for anyone listening in, we've got some great free resources, and I'll give you the link and you can drop it in the show notes. But we take the top 100 roles to hire in the Philippines and what they cost as a junior, mid, and senior level perspective in this ebook. And we even have one that's focused around e-commerce businesses. So how to actually structure a small e-commerce business versus a larger e-commerce business. Right now, it's a little bit more focused on private label businesses, but we will absolutely come out with one that is for dropshipping. But I would say the nature of it's the same. You just wouldn't have that product development function, or it would look somewhat different in terms of how you're approaching its product selection versus development. So you can see like what would an org structure look like? What would it cost? We even have all the job descriptions that you can click into and download for free with a Google editable version of it for job descriptions. So we've got all of these free resources that I'm happy to share with you, James. And, we created it for ourselves first because we want to make sure that we're paying fair market rates, but then we realized that would help a lot of people sort of understand what was possible.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. We'll make sure that is in the description and the show notes beneath this episode because they're a very, very valuable resource. And we've gone deep into hiring and talking about hiring virtual assistants because the more and more mature I get with my business's growth, the more I realize a key skill to what really keeps the business growing is my ability to hire, my ability to look after virtual assistants as well. So to close out, Yoni, I mean, we've talked a lot about hiring today. If somebody was looking to hire and they were keen potentially to work with Multiply Me, where would you say people should start? Where would they get in touch with you and learn more about the services that you provide?
I mean, I'm always happy to have a conversation with someone if I can help them. But I would say that honestly, on our website, you can find the booking link to jump on Kat, our Director of Client Engagement's call, and she would be very happy to walk you through sort of the process, help you understand even pre-built examples of people that we've hired, help guide you through that process. That's sort of what we at Multiply Me pride ourselves on, is really helping educate the market first. And if we get to work together, fantastic. But we're definitely here to be, a helpful resource first and foremost.
Amazing. Fantastic. We'll make sure that's all linked as well in the description. So thank you, Yoni, for joining us today. Really enjoyed today's conversation on the podcast. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, James. I've enjoyed it. I hope people got some good value.
100%. Absolutely. Thank you very much. Well, Lewis, that really was a deep dive with Yoni Kozminski there. And we really went beyond the typical growth strategies. And we really talked about A-League virtual assistants. And I just thoroughly enjoyed that conversation. I think the clarity that he brings to financial optimization and business scaling is really unparalleled.
Yes, it was a fantastic conversation. And I think it became clear that it's not just about incremental gains, but really exponential growth. If you can truly understand the value of hiring the right people, it can do wonders for your business.
Yeah, it's something that's probably overlooked when you start an e-commerce business, how important it is to get the right people on board, but it'll be crucial for long-term success. But I think what's really important about when we listen to these episodes is that we apply what we've learned today. And I know that I've got so much I'm going to take away and implement into my own business so that we can make informed decisions that align with our long-term growth objectives.
Exactly. And to help you implement these strategies, Yoni has generously provided further in-depth training available exclusive in our members-only premium content as well. Plus, to complement Yoni's tactics, I recommend checking out the systematic approach laid out in my book, The Home Turf Advantage, which you can access at htabook.com. Together, if you combine these two, they provide an incredible toolkit for any e-commerce entrepreneur who's serious about scaling up efficiently. So head over to htabook.com now to get started and to harness the full potential of your e-commerce adventure.
Enjoying the podcast? We'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment or a review, and we might just feature it on an upcoming episode. Also, for detailed show notes and resources, head to dropshipunlocked.com/podcast.
If you found value from any episode of this podcast, please take just 10 seconds to leave us a quick 5-star review on your podcast app of choice. It helps us more than you could imagine, and who knows, you might just hear your comments on the show. Thanks for being part of our community. Your support helps us keep delivering a new episode every week.
Now it's time to answer a question that we've received from a listener. Remember, if you want your question answered on the podcast, all you need to do is comment beneath the YouTube video version of this episode, and we might just answer it in an upcoming podcast episode. So that's exactly what Furhat has done. And he has asked, I am just wondering, would these suppliers sell you products one by one, or would they want you to buy in bulk?
Thanks for your question, Furhat. So yeah, we specifically partner with suppliers who are already familiar with the dropshipping model, because that ensures that they're already ready to handle orders individually one by one. As each order is placed by the end customer, it comes through to you, they pay retail price. You can then use the customer's funds that have come through to your business bank account to then pay the trade price to the suppliers for an individual item, ensuring that they're happy to ship those items out one by one, avoiding you having to part with tens of thousands of pounds of your own money to buy bulk stock that may never even sell. We make sure that from the get-go, they are equipped and willing to ship products one at a time. So hopefully that answers that part of the question. Now, the business model that we use, the Home Turf Advantage, allows us to order products on a per order basis. So this means that we only place orders with our supplier once we've received them already from the customers. It's streamlined. It's a really easy process. It minimizes inventory risk. It minimizes your cash flow problems because cash comes in before it goes out. And so by working with suppliers who are already set up for dropshipping, we avoid the complexities and the financial burdens associated with bulk buying. So it keeps it really simple on the logistics front, but it also allows you to offer a much wider variety of products because you don't have to go and buy those products ahead of time. It costs you nothing to put them up on a digital shelf on a digital storefront.
Exactly. Thank you for your answer there, Lewis. Yeah, great question, and just highlights the benefits of the dropshipping business model. So it's now time to highlight a review that we've had in for the podcast as well. So a big thank you to Succeed.com for the YouTube comment. And they have said, thank you both. It's so useful to hear actual stories of how people have succeeded with this system. There are so many aspects of different people's stories that resonate with those looking at this. And James, your story just shows what's possible with hard work and determination. Many thanks.
Wow, thank you so much for your review again. Before we go, I have one question that I'd appreciate if you could help me with. Have you left us a review yet? If not, please leave our podcast a review wherever you're listening to us today. It should take you about 10 seconds, but it really does wonders for us, and it's a huge part of what drives us to continue with this podcast. So if you like what you've heard and you'd like us to continue creating these episodes and you haven't left us a review yet, please take just a moment now to do so. And hopefully we can read it out for you on an upcoming episode soon.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Dropship Unlocked podcast. We hope you're walking away with insights and inspiration.
To kickstart your e-commerce journey, grab a copy of my book, The Home Turf Advantage, at htabook.com. It's a distilled guide based on real experience to help you build your e-commerce venture.
Don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more strategies and success stories. And if you like what you heard, a 5-star review would mean the world to us, and you might just get a shout out on an upcoming episode.
And finally, thank you for deciding to spend your time with us today. We can't wait to bring you more insights on the next episode of the Dropship Unlocked podcast.